Hello, lovers, and welcome to Heart, the Living Spiritfully podcast. I am your host, Paul Galoro, and it's such an honor to have you here on this journey. So, as I mentioned in the little mini episode, this podcast would not be an actual thing if it weren't for our very first guest. Now, I talk quite a bit about her, and I give a little bit of an intro of my connection to our first guest, which you will hear in a moment once the episode begins. But I just wanted to acknowledge once again how Ummul-Kiram Patrawala just fills my heart. And if it wasn't for her, again, this podcast would not be. Please enjoy this conversation, this heart-to-heart that I have with Ummul-Kiram Patrawala. I was so inspired. I am still so inspired by that conversation, and I know you will be too. Good morning, my love. So for everyone that's joining us, I'm so happy to introduce you to my very first guest ever on the Heart to Heart Living Spiritfully podcast. I'm still working on the name. Bear with me. But my first guest here is Ummul-Kiram Patrawala. And I hope I said that
Beautiful.
as close to the fullest vibration as I can. Ummul, I want to welcome you and I want to thank you so much. So truly, if it wasn't for you reaching out to me, this podcast that has been an idea in the back of my mind for 3 years now would not happen. So from the entirety of my heart to yours, I want to thank you so much for initiating this conversation that we're about to have.
Thank you.
I want to share a little bit about our experience and how we met. So it was back in 2016, I think, was it? That we met in a Kundalini yoga teacher training. And I remember when I met you, I was just like, there's something about this woman. Like, I just felt this instant connection. And although like we were on separate sides of the room, and that was a pretty big group that we were with, and I don't think we really actually worked together until, was it did we work together on the meditation, the sitting meditation that we did in the middle of Nathan Phillips Square?
No, you were in a different group, and I was doing the that festival type of event. Yeah.
I just remember being so connected to you. And one of the things that I always felt really comfortable with you. Now, I've been all my life interested in different belief systems. And I remember there was one time when I reached out to you to shed a little light on a tradition or a celebration around Christmas time. If you had so you're Muslim, if I'm not mistaken. And so I had reached out to ask you to tell me a little bit more of a celebration of light in the Muslim faith. And you shared it so openly, and it just expanded my mind and my heart. And for that, I'm like forever grateful for you, because I love you tremendously. So I welcome you. And now that I've gushed my heart a little bit, tell me, how is your heart?
Thank you, Paul. First of all, thank you so much for having me with you in the presence of your beautiful heart. And I truly believe that's our connection. Because if I dial it back to the teacher training and, you know, how I felt connected with you, it is the vibration that you carry. It's always from your heart. And there's just so much love that, you know, I felt. And that's when I truly sort of get magnetized to that vibration, right? Love is magnetizing. And even though we didn't have, like you said, those opportunities to be working together, because those vibrations are always present, I've always deeply felt connected to you and the work that you do and the way you share it in just from here, right? It's that's what I always feel from you. It's like this huge, beautiful, glittery love ball, right? That's what you are, and so much more. But yeah, so that's, I feel grateful that we have this opportunity to connect in this way and to let our hearts sort of come together and then, serve the collective heart. So what's on my heart this morning? What I really, really want to start with this morning is, first of all, thank you for, so beautifully acknowledging the vibration of my name, Ummul-Kiram. It's an Arabic name, and I was given that name by someone who understands numerology and sort of the science of sound. And it was given to my mom when I was in her womb.
Oh, wow.
And that's a practice in our culture that, the parents receive the name, they ask for a name because the name, as you know, carries a vibration. And quite often it carries the vibration of your soul purpose here on the planet. And that's sort of the tradition that our family followed. And as I grew up in India, and it's not a common Indian name either. India is predominantly sort of a Hindu country. So for the longest time, I grew up with that name, and that name became a source of embarrassment for me. People would sort of find renditions of my name, and I was always made fun of, to the extent that eventually I started getting upset at my own name, and my parents were giving me this long name. It's like, why did I have to get the longest name in the universe that nobody can ever say? And it was definitely tough growing up. And even when I came to Canada, I was about 18, and people started asking my name. As soon as I would say it, people just stare at me like, and they would just not talk to me after that because it was intimidating, right? No one wants to be embarrassed and say names incorrectly. Anyway, so I disowned my identity completely at that point. I mean, I was doing that growing up anyways, but that's sort of where it started. I was in university, and my name in university, people know me as Uma, because I felt like, oh, you know what? That's short, that's common, people get it. Uma is an Uma Thurman, it's easy. So that's the identity I sort of chose to live with for, the 4 years in university. And even I went to work and I was still called by that same name. And yesterday morning, so this story has been going on. I have, until yesterday morning, I haven't really got into this space of allowing the vibration of who I am to be really owned by me and to really sort of proclaim it out in the world. So it came to me in meditation yesterday because I've been sort of holding intention for divine to guide me as to how am I supposed to serve in this time, because the needs are really high, and I need to do my inner work. There is a need for me to really go within and do my work as I prepare to serve others. And what came to me is the meaning of the vibration of the name that I've been given. And Ummul-Kiram, it has a few different meanings, but the core essence is the mother of the mother. It embodies the mother archetype and the energy of the mother.
I feel that within me. When you said that, it was like this. There was an expansion and a wrapping.
Yeah.
Mother of the mother. Ummul-Kiram.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I see that. I feel that in you.
Yeah. So it's really interesting because, as it landed and that knowing landed, I reflected on all the ways I serve to date. And what is it that people resonate back when I'm in service, and what is it that they say, they feel? Mm-hmm. And the words are always nurture, safe, supported, loved, cocooned, mm-hmm. calm, clarity. And as I reflected on that, there was this sort of deep knowing that that's the vibration that I have been sort of carrying and sharing. Just that for me to really go into deeper alignment with my soul purpose in this time, I need to allow the vibration and allow that vibration to be set out by others and myself. Because that's going to just truly deeply activate my purpose at a greater level. And that's the intention I'm holding.
Oh, I love
And that's what my ask was. And it was always within me. It
Yeah.
was owning my identity. And it's really there's no coincidences, and it's such a huge synchronicity, because we're living in a time where we're talking about, how do we do our work so that we can acknowledge identities of all our brothers and sisters. But it starts with us, because if I disown myself, can I truly from my heart really see everyone in their true light?
Mm-hmm.
There's a block.
Right, because the part of yourself that you're disowning, you are disowning it within everyone else as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah, I love the synchronicity of the conversation that we're planning to have today as well. And why I reached out to you, and just sort of how the universe always guides you when you sort of open up.
Mm-hmm.
And when you come into prayer, when you come into connection, and you allow your heart to sort of stay open despite all that discomfort of what's happening within you in that moment.
And you know what's interesting too, because I remember, so when we had taken teacher training, you and I had already been teaching for years before, and you were doing a lot of kids yoga, weren't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
and then, yeah, the event that you worked on was an event for kids.
Yes.
Meditation. Oh my,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. So it's amazing. So honestly, Paul, my whole life has been unraveling in front of me since yesterday, in terms of, look at the path that has unfolded. And it wasn't planned, or not a conscious, or I put it on my vision board and it happened, but just guided to. And it's time to own it. It's time to acknowledge it and say, this is the work that I do.
Yeah.
And part of doing that work is for me to first deliver that same nurturance and that same love to myself. And I've been holding back.
Mm. And it started with you. I want to use the words that you used again, and they're not coming to my mind right now. But when you said about your identity, about reclaiming your identity,
Yes.
owning it,
Owning my identity.
owning your identity.
Yeah, and my vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Because we are, we have this physical form, but Paul, I mean, we all have this energetic presence, this vibration, right? That we are constantly beaming in the universe, all of us. And I really, yesterday morning I saw how I was almost resisting it, even though everything that I do is all about it, but I just didn't want to bring it in. And it just shows how deep these layers of blind spots are within our subconscious programming, right? Because I need to fit in. I need to be acknowledged. I want to feel like I am like everyone else. I mean, those were the thoughts that were sort of showing up that kept me from embracing my identity. But I think the big thing that happened yesterday is it's okay to be different, and embodying that it's okay to be different. I've always consciously understood it, but I disowned my identity in so many ways. I in fact, one time when I was a teen, someone actually called me, and a friend of mine said, "Oh, the ugly duckling turns into a beautiful swan." And it's like the ugly duckling. And that's how I was considered growing up. I was the ugly duckling who was super sensitive, cried at everything. Even now I could just cry, it's easy for me. That's how I process and integrate. And, being in a culture where you're not allowed to express how you feel and emotions, and tears are seen as a sign of weakness, I became this strange being who that's the only thing she knew to do. And then I was also sort of physically different, and I'm taller than the average East Indian woman. Sort of I darker skin, skin color also mattered in our country, and we'll go into that conversation in a little bit. So I always stuck out, and I always felt growing up that I never fitted in. And I felt like I didn't belong.
Mm.
And I remember as a child talking to God and asking, why am I here? Like, why did you put me here if I don't belong? Yeah.
Wow. How old were you when you asked that question? Do you remember?
Uh, I think like since like I can recall like about the age of 6, like it was a constant, Paul. I would constantly have these conversations with God, because if there was one thing that anchored me throughout all of these experiences was this innate knowing that there is a greater power. At that point, I called it God,
Mhm.
right? It's just whatever you want to call it. Now, universe, divine, doesn't matter the name, the label. But I knew that there was this presence that I could connect with and talk to.
Mm.
And that was my safety ground, is to go into a space and just talk, or go into prayer. There were prayers that I was taught, and there's a prayer where you connect with the earth and your forehead's on the earth. That was my favorite space, going, connecting my forehead to the earth and talking to God and
Wow.
asking.
Wow. Mother of the mother, Mother Earth. So that
Yeah,
where the connection forehead to
yeah.
the ground. Wow. I love that. It's interesting because I asked that question because you saying that, having always asked God, like, why am I here? Why
Hmm.
am I here if I don't fit in? I feel
Yeah.
like I've asked that same question in many different ways myself ever since I was a
Mm,
young child.
mm,
And one thing that I'm curious about, because I've
mhm,
seen sort of how that morphed for me
mhm,
in my journey.
mhm,
As a child, I was born and raised Catholic. And
mhm,
then it was probably somewhere in my teens, I was just like, "Well, I hear what you're saying. The message is
mhm,
lovely, but it just doesn't,
mhm.
like the way you're delivering the message, it just doesn't work for me." And something came to me recently where I recognized that the God that I was brought up with knowing isn't the God that I've experienced.
Yes.
And so I think, like, I remember speaking to God when I was younger, but it's
Mhm,
not the God, like the experience of God that I know now. There was almost like this, well, wait a second, what am I actually praying to?
mhm,
And it was like
mhm,
once I recognized, oh, there was a shift at some point in my life. And it wasn't just the label, it wasn't just
mhm.
the techniques that I used to
Right.
communicate. It was the actual experience
I
of God.
understand completely. Yeah.
So yeah, that was one thing that came to mind. So I'm curious to know, like, do you feel that the God that you were speaking to when you were younger is a different experience than the one you speak to now?
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's such a different version. The God similar to yourself, Paul. I mean, I was brought up in sort of in a Muslim household, and I learned my prayers and all of that, and in a lot of the teachings in our religion, I mean, God was merciful, but God, you also had sort of to fear God in a way, because if you did this, then you might not go to heaven, and if you did this, so in those days, my relationship to God was, there was a lot of fear around, oh, if I want to do this, am I going to displease you? Like, am I going to go into hell? And what's my point system looking like? That was the relationship, and that relationship sort of stayed that way. And I'm trying to dial it back as to when did I start really feeling. I would say it was in my 30s. So in 2010, we won't go deep into the story, but that's sort of a complete rebirth. I felt like every part of me was shed, and every part of me was rebirthed, to the extent that the rebirth involved me being on bed rest for 7 months, and coming out of the rebirth, my body wasn't moving the way I was used to moving it. Like, I had no muscle strength left. I had, even my cognitive abilities, I felt, had just like dropped, and I was in a deep, dark sort of PTSD space then. Um, and it was, in that dark space, yet there was this anchor and this soul that that I had carried in that period rebirthed me. And her name, again, that was given, based on the vibration that each spirit carries, was Sakina, meaning peace.
Sakina. Sakina. That's beautiful. So
That soul came to me
wow,
with the message of peace.
I was going to ask that
Yeah,
that was a message that came.
yeah, that was her name, and she transitioned.
Mm,
But she left me sort of, when people talk about my heart was broken in a million pieces, well, I experienced it.
wow.
And I experienced it physically at every level. I felt like every part of me was just raw,
Mhm.
and so raw. And I think after her is when I started recognizing that there's something far deeper to this relationship with God, and it's not just about fear, but there is also love.
Mhm.
And what is this love? It's such an abstract concept. Like, I don't think I really understood love until that moment, in terms of how I felt losing something that I dearly, dearly wanted, yet left so humbled in those 7 months of silence, and not being able to get up and move, and just everything is a pause in your life. I truly received the clarity of what matters, and just like the simple moments of, like, just watching my older boys like go outside and smile and laugh. I would pray that I can do that again. And that presence, I connected to what it is to be really present and alive in this moment. And in that moment is where you connect with the essence, the spirit of God. It's in the now. It's when you just feel everything at such a deep level that I don't even have words to express how it feels, when you feel so alive
Yeah.
from your soul, and so connected with everything,
Mhm.
so deeply connected with everything.
Mhm.
And since then the journey shifted, Paul. In about 2014, I was still part of a institution that I used to go and pray, but in 2014, as I started hearing the messaging, I all of a sudden I felt like I was trapped and I was fenced, and the messaging was so fear-based that I'm like, I can't let my children and myself listen to this messaging, because all I talk about is love, but this is not talking about love. And then it was like this really obvious, like, what am I doing here?
Mhm.
Like, why am I here? And this knowing just landed that I can guide my spiritual journey and still be in connection with divine. And in fact, divine is all loving. And in fact, I choose to live heaven on earth or hell on earth. There is no waiting.
Mhm.
This is not like a waiting game. I make those choices every day.
Mhm.
And that's when I left the formal religious institution, because I felt in my being that programming that I was carrying, that was so fear-based, needed to start now getting dissolved. And I'm still working on it.
Oh yeah.
It's a journey.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Like, especially when this is something that you sort of grew up with. One of my spiritual teachers once said, you have to reconcile the religion of your upbringing, because that was your first introduction to God.
Yes.
And I remember hearing that and thinking, yeah, I had to, because I had resisted it for the longest time. And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, slowly started to embrace the messaging, but
Yes.
not the delivery of the message,
Yes.
not the fear-basedness of the message.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and one of the things that you said about the present moment, it made me think. So I wear, oh, it's tucked under my shirt today, but I wear a cross, and I wear this
Mm-hmm.
for multiple reasons. I haven't
Mm-hmm.
really explained it, but a lot of people, when they see it, they think, oh, Christian, Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so my mother, when I traveled the world 2 years ago, and I said, "Okay, Mom, I'm peacing out," and she was like, "Wait, take this with you." So she had this made for me,
Oh.
and I wear it, but I had it designed. I wanted it very simple, but to land on my heart, because what this cross
Mm-hmm.
actually represents, and depending on who you ask, they'll tell
Mm-hmm.
you different things. But
Mm-hmm.
to me, this represents the intersection of linear time
Mm-hmm.
and divine time.
Yes.
The divine time is vertical because it's about
Mm-hmm.
ascension.
Yes.
Linear time is horizontal because it's,
Mm-hmm.
past, present, future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that center point, the now, where the two meet. Divine
Mm-hmm.
time and linear time meet.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't find divine time in the past. We won't find it in the future. It's like right here. And that's that experience of what we call in A Course in Miracles, that experience of our oneness. And that's
Yes.
what love is,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In Kundalini yoga training, in one of our books, it broke down what God stands for. And it was an
Mm-hmm.
acronym:
Yes.
governing, governing,
Organizing.
organizing, and destructive. But I also put in transformative in there. And
Yeah.
I'm like, that's basically the creative force of the universe.
Yeah.
We see that in nature. We see it in the seasons.
Yeah.
We see it in things that grow. We see it
Absolutely.
in animals. We see it in humans. That's what it is. So then I think, okay, so where you had said like about love, it being an experience, what is love? To me, love will always, it will always emulate the creative force of the universe. So it's going to grow, it's going to
Mm-hmm.
organize, or it's going to transform.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're definitely seeing a need for that, and also how it's starting to happen in the world today. That transformation where we're seeing structures are starting to
Mm-hmm.
transform and crumble and change, and
Mm-hmm.
new things are trying to be birthed. So it's so
Absolutely.
fascinating. I love that we're having this conversation. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you for creating the space.
Oh my gosh, my honor. So you had said a lot of this stuff was happening just as you turned 30 or in your 30s. I'm just trying to think, like, like, is this, how is this playing out, like, in relation to your return of Saturn? I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, no. And again, that's a language sort of, understanding sort of, I know that there's such an intricate relationship we have with not, all the rhythms around us, the planetary rhythms, and, as much as the seasonal rhythms and all of that. I don't know that language as much, but for me, 2010, and this is 2020, so that's a decade ago. So I was about to be, it was May 2010. So I was 33 years old.
Oh, okay. So well, 33 is known as the Jesus year.
Hmm.
Some say that it's the Jesus year because that's the year in the Bible when he did all of his like profound stuff. So
Mm.
that's when a lot of people, which I think also
Mm-hmm.
is sort of your coming out of your return of Saturn around that time.
Mm-hmm.
Is when you sit down and start to think like, what am I actually doing here?
Yeah.
What is my
Yeah.
purpose? And
Yeah.
that play out, because I remember when I was approaching 30 and then also 33, first of all, I put this huge pressure that 33 had to be this big transformative year. I'm like, I
Yeah.
get all the Jesus stuff in here now. But then I also remember like it was leading up to 30 that my life started to change. Then after it was just like, and one of the reasons why I did that huge trip around the world was because I was like, girl, you got to get your shit together. You're saying a lot of stuff, but you actually got to do it. Like I was saying, trust the universe and blah, blah. I was like, follow your heart, I was like, you got to actually do that in order to be able to speak from that place.
So
And
true.
that's where that experience came for me.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to go back, if you're open to it, because
Yeah.
the conversation that we had before this
Yes.
recording was a lot about like what was going on in the world, and you had said
Yes.
so many profound things that I would love to be
Yes.
able to like dive into and
Yes, please.
express again. So why don't you? I'll leave that to you, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you. All right. So and everything is interrelated truly, and what I spoke about earlier was, I think, levels of me doing my own inner work, but just in light of the planet's sort of the vibration on the planet raising, and everyone's sort of having to look at all levels of their being, whatever you want to call it, however you label them, and process. In the last few weeks we've witnessed this whole coming of let's truly acknowledge how we all, no matter who we are, right? And I don't think it's just someone, who is labeled as a white person. I think, I'm not white, I'm brown, right? But all of us, I believe, have a responsibility to acknowledge how we have, at some level, carried these biases against members, our brothers and sisters who are darker skinned, right? And who are labeled as Black people, and have carried so many labels, generations and generations over and over. And that's what prompted me to reach out to you, because I was seeing a lot about the white people need to do their work, white people need to do their work. And for me, as I sat with it, it dawned on me that I need to do my work. I'm not white, but there's work to be done, because as someone who grew up in India, I, for the longest time, experienced and have been programmed to believe that white is better, and dark means you are not privileged. And it's subtle, and it's also out there in a big way, both ways, and we'll go into that. So what came to me was, I need to do my work, and I had to sort of dig deep as to, where is this coming from? Like, how is it that in my culture, where we have all ranges of Black to brown to Black, right? Why is it that I'm holding these programs, and where are they coming from? And I spoke to my mom about it, and we were talking about the British. And when the British were in India, and they ruled India, how sort of, they appeared to some people, like my grandma genuinely believed that they were good. They were doing good to the country.
Really?
I would have arguments with her, because she sort of just saw sort of the, the external programming that they had created. Oh, we created the railroads for you, and we did this, and there appears to be peace. While meanwhile, they were stripping the country of all the resources, and had created so many, what's the word? So many divisions. And that's where the seed of dark versus light came, because they conditioned us to believe that they were superior, they were light skinned, they were superior. I remember sort of growing up, and you'd see movies or things where Indian people would treat them like, the white skinned sort of British, they would be treated like God. And then we were subservient, because we were not that skin color. And so then there comes to be this culture, and I'm making a blanket statement, and maybe not everyone got that programming, but I surely do carry it. I know that, and I surely did witness it growing up. I stayed in India for 18 years, and it's definitely something that I've experienced and seen all around me. So I'll speak from that lens. But what I saw and what I grew up with then is, especially for women, being light-skinned and being fair was really important. There was a huge brand growing up called Fair and Lovely. How British is that? Fair and Lovely.
I think of My Fair Lady when you say that. Yeah.
And women, I remember, you'd see ads everywhere. Like growing up, I remember billboards upon billboards, Fair and Lovely. Women would be going into these parlors and getting their skin bleached, because we need to be lighter. We need to, not, let's disown this, and let's try to become that, which has been programmed. And where it really is unfortunate, and I know, and I have witnessed it, is for women. If you were dark skinned, then you were not worthy of getting the same marriage proposals as someone who was fair skinned. It's almost like she lived a more privileged life because she was fair, versus if I wasn't, then I might not have access to the same privileges, right? So at a really small scale, Paul, that gives me the ability to have so much compassion for what our Black community is currently experiencing, because I saw a sliver of it, but they carry years and years and years of just unjust, disrespect, unjust.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I know how it felt And I know that I always did stuff to lighten my skin. I was like, oh, skin routine. I got to put stuff on to be lighter.
Wow. Did you ever question it while you were doing it? Did you ever think like, why am I actually doing this while you were doing?
I know, because Paul, it was so deeply in my programming, and it was just everywhere,
Mhm.
that it just, but I did feel that, oh, but I'm not fair skinned. I did feel like I'm not so worthy
Yeah,
because I don't have that complexion.
right.
And so there was this I'm not enoughness. There were already other reasons why there was I'm not enoughness, but that added to the I'm not enough, and I'm not good enough.
Wow. It's interesting because with you speaking and just hearing your story and what you're talking about, it makes me think about so born Italian, and I remember growing up in an Italian area
Mhm.
down in Toronto, and as much as we were Italian, I never felt as though my family really embraced it. And there was even a point where I rejected it. I was like, I'm not
Mhm.
Italian because a lot of the things that I saw with the way Italian people, um, the way I perceived that Italian people treated gay people, and the way that
Mm.
I perceived Italian people were just treated in general. And I
Mhm.
also remember because my parents came to Canada when they were very young, and when they came to Toronto, nobody liked Italian people. Like
Mm.
they were just, there was a lot of like prejudice against Italian people.
Mm.
And you actually see in the Italian community, you were either raised proud of being Italian or you were
Mhm.
raised like, try to be as English as you possibly could.
Mm.
And I sort of fell somewhere in between, but more towards the renounce your Italian heritage.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I was in my mid 30s and just hearing my mother speak, like something inside of me said, Paul, you need to reconnect with your heritage.
Mhm.
And then I was just listening to the way my mother would speak about certain
Mhm.
things. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, I see. You were even programmed to believe that it was bad to be Italian.
Mm.
And so it was just really funny how that was, not funny, interesting how that was
Mhm.
transferred then to me. And I didn't even know, but I just remember having this feeling inside, like I need to reject it. And
Mhm.
so that's interesting because I think, and as I say this, this is not meant to like undermine anyone's experience. For me, it's how I see we're all experiencing the same thing or a similar thing in a variation of it. But that's almost like there's like you said, you experienced that, and I experienced that in a certain way. So then that helps me see how other people are experiencing it, right? Because I feel that conflict within me, and because I can
Mhm.
feel it within me, I can see it between two other groups.
Mhm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's where a lot of our I think that's where the world peace is really going to come from, is the svadhyaya, right? That self study that we talk about
Mhm.
in yoga,
Mhm.
is when we all start to like see it within ourselves, then we see how
Mhm.
that conflict within us plays out in the world, and then that's how we heal that conflict within us towards other people to then ripple out into the world.
Yeah.
But we're
Yeah.
also at a point now where I love how you said, I'm doing my internal work so I can serve, right? Like
Yeah.
we got to do the internal work and
Yes.
serve the collective at the same time because we
Yes.
waited too long to do
Yeah.
the internal work.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And to that, Paul, what I would say is the big message that I feel called to share is that, if you're sort of sitting and sort of watching witnessing what's happening right now, and you're feeling like, I truly feel like, um, I see everyone as equal. Whatever sort of your statement is, I'm always been a loving person. I just want to sort of plant the seed of, just bring curiosity to that process, because, you know, I first sat at that space too when I first started seeing everything, and I'm like, no, but I'm all about love, and I'm the mother. I love everyone. But truly, yet, as I dug deeper, I recognized that we each have programming, which is our subconscious, mind, and our subconscious mind is in action for most of us. Again, general statement, about 90 to 95% of the time.
Mm.
So, and what is the subconscious mind? Well, it's programming, imprints that you carry ancestrally, right? That have just, that you, it's sort of the epigenetics of it that you have within you.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's programming that got registered from 0 to 6 as you saw the world through the eyes of your grandparents, your teachers, your caregivers, all those people who surrounded you, and the messages that they had. Now, if they weren't seeing the world with the lens of equity, guess what? Those programs have snuck in and have been uploaded into your subconscious.
Right.
And those show up in a very subtle way, in very, very subtle ways. Mm-hmm. And I know for me too, they were showing up in very subtle ways. And I'm still exploring that now. And sort of really bringing my awareness, like you said, that going inwards is where it's at. Like, if we want to say that I support and I truly believe that we're all equal, then I say, please, 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 don't do this. Like, don't point like this has to be fixed, that has to be fixed.
Yeah.
We are so empowered if we just go here and start really looking ourselves in the eyes with gentleness and compassion, mm-hmm. and then start the unraveling. It's done. Yeah. Right? It's what you said. There would be, the external world would reflect it.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's so much more than like me saying that on social media, or me following that mind control of social media that's out there right now, right? Mm-hmm. It's so easy to go into this sprint mode where it's like, oh, it's trending right now. This is what the chat is all about. So I'm like going like full swing on whatever channels I have. But I say, and I had to say this to myself too, because I'm speaking from my own lens and my own experience. I had to remind myself that this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. This is how I choose to live my life in awareness. And every day I'm going to have to look at my own eyes and go into my own heart and reflect on my experiences and then grow from there. It's not like today I did the work and it's done tomorrow. There's layers and layers of our being that are going to keep coming up to be processed. And as humanity, we commit to that way of being, that way of living with awareness in consciousness.
Right.
Saying no to just being in autopilot mode all along, because that's where all these inequities stem from, because you don't even see them. You don't even recognize you're doing it and you're part of it. Mm-hmm. You think, oh, well, it's not me, it's them. No. I can't say, oh, it's not me, it's all the white people. I'm just going to sit back and watch this show. No.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. That's the whole thing about it, right? If you believe that it's not me, then it's you.
Yeah.
It's funny when teaching yoga and in my early years, I would cue, right? Especially when I was teaching at a gym, I would cue. I would say, okay, yeah, this is the check knee over ankle. And then like I would be looking at someone who's not doing that. And then I would say in the mic, if you think I'm not speaking to you, I probably am.
I love that.
That's exactly what it is here, right? Those of us that think, oh, it's not me, it's everyone else. And this is how insidious racism is, and white supremacy, right? It's like we don't think it's happening, but it's not like this pen, this is racism, and anything around it's not. Mm-hmm. It's a like, I don't even want to say an energy. It's like a slime that just mm-hmm. seeps into everything. Mm-hmm. That is like, mm-hmm. it's poisonous, and then it latches on, and it's an entity.
Yeah.
It latches on because, in energetics, we talk about entities that latch mm-hmm. onto people's souls or mm-hmm. into their energy mm-hmm. bodies that people then take on qualities of that entity. Yeah. We don't realize the entity that is racism. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And that's what we have to dismantle. We have to dismantle that entity's attachment to us.
To us. Absolutely.
And And I want to make sure that we also acknowledge those of us that are doing the work and the people that
Yes.
are doing the work that are that it is coming off of. And I think this is why it's those that are really racist are getting even more powerful now, because everything that's detached off of those doing the work has to stick to something. And it's
Yeah.
going to stick to what it already knows. And
Yeah.
then it's going to come in mass forms,
Yeah.
as we're seeing in the world right now, with big like clashes. And wow, I didn't think we were going to go there, but
But that's the reality that
right
we
now. Thank
witness,
you.
right? That we're living through right now. And the ones, as you're doing the inner work, yes, if you can support other brothers and sisters who have businesses, or who have not had opportunities, or not been able to shine as you have, then do that as well. It's not to undermine or undervalue that, but to realize that the focus first needs to be internal, and then you can take action from that space,
Right.
right? So it's kind of balancing all levels of how that engagement looks. If you want to sort of advocate through your voice, however, join the protest, like those are great action steps. But also when you come back home, do the inner work as well, like balance it out. It's not one or the other. The inner work is always going to be there. And if we all just do that, I mean, eventually there won't be protests, there won't be any of those things, because we're all sort of living in harmony,
Right.
right? We're all sort of have a self-check system
Yeah.
in place. Yeah.
A friend of mine shared a post the other day about like our role in the whole activism.
Mm-hmm.
And there was different roles, and when I was reading them, the three that stuck out for me that I felt like I could contribute, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel as though I would be able to um, fully serve in a
Mm-hmm.
protest situation, or
Mm-hmm.
in certain
Mm-hmm.
situations in the activism that's very needed. But I
Mm-hmm.
know I'm able to serve, and the three that came up was caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
healer,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't remember the third one right now, but it was in that sort of realm of nurturing and caring for people. Because
Yes.
one of the things, it happened with COVID and it's happening with
Mm-hmm.
this now, is I sort of stopped and I looked back and I thought, okay, what's happening in the world? What do I see?
Mm-hmm.
And I just saw a lot of tired, burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
exhausted people. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, in order for you to keep doing the work that we all need to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna share my energy with you to help amplify your energy, so you can
Yes.
go back out there and do it. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
in the days of the wars, the nurses that would take
Yes.
care of the wounded, and
Yes.
then the wounded would then go back out after they
Yes.
healed to continue their soldiering.
Yeah.
Um, that's yeah, and in the early days of COVID, I considered myself a white blood cell in the
Mm.
immune system of everything right now,
Mm-hmm.
that was helping with the healing process for
Mm-hmm.
people to then be able to continue healing. I don't know if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
that's beautiful. I love
Where
that
would you
analogy.
say your role is in? I have my
Yes.
assumptions about what your role is
Yeah.
based on this
Yeah.
conversation, but what would you say is your role in that whole activism? Let me see it. And while you're answering that, I'm going to try to see
Yeah.
if I can find the post and then give you the like ones that are there.
Yeah. So I know innately one of the biggest roles, and I think that's why all this inner work is showing up for me, is to use the gifts that I have. What I received yesterday is that I carry these codes in my consciousness that are of that nurturing mother spirit. And if I can hold, just like you, Paul, right? Like that's what we do for each other. We hold space for each other, and that's how we're interconnected, and that's how we all heal, grow, thrive together. It's just so beautiful. So similarly, in those instances, then when I'm holding space, then I become that channel who can transmit those codes to whoever needs it, so then they can do their inner work and move through whatever they need to move through. I'm not doing any of that. I am just sort of allowing those codes to be transmitted.
Right.
And then holding space in like, just like a mother does, right? With complete acceptance, love, nurturing, and safety. Like, I think right now, and that's what I've been doing since COVID too, is trying to create safe containers for people, because everyone's nervous systems are so thrown off. And everyone's nervous systems show up differently. Some of people are like activated, but they don't know what to do and mobilize their energy, right? Like, they're like, where do I go? I mean, now we have some, we can go to conservation parks. Before, we couldn't even do that. Where do I burn off all this energy? And then there were ones who were like, oh my God, I am just like, the world is not safe. I'm frozen. And they need that support to, again, sort of start feeling safe. And that's what I've been doing. I've been creating sort of this container for safety support, like that root chakra work, to just allow people to know that you're okay, you're safe, you're supported, you're heard, you're seen, you're felt. And that's my contribution. That's what I want to put out, is for anyone who's listening to this. And if you are someone who, who has moved through a lot of these injustices that we are witnessing sort of at a global scale now, and that have come to light. They've always been there, but just being brought to light in a big way. And if you don't have the resources and, the means to sort of move forward in even processing your own traumas, because every person who, again, these are general statements, but the Black community as a whole carries so much trauma, epigenetically, and in their subconscious, they're carrying so much trauma. And if you need that support, and if you don't have the resources, then please reach out to me, because that is my gift to the world. Whether I'm consciously doing it or not, it's that energy, that imprint, that code that I have been gifted, that allows people to unravel through their traumas, because I can create that safe, supported container for you. And that's my offering. That's how I want to support this, is because, as I know that we all need to heal, and I want to be there to hold space for you.
So, okay, how can people get in touch with you? I want to make sure that there's a way for them to do that.
Yes. So a couple of ways. So if you're on Instagram, if you're on social media, then I have sort of two presences. One is just Ummul Patrawala. I had, that was before owning my identity, so Ummul Patrawala. Or I recently, with my husband, birthed this online community called Heal Your World. And so heal.your.world on IG as well. And that was the vision of that community, was to allow consciousness and living consciously, and make that accessible to all. And to recognize that it's daily habits and practices that need to be embodied to live consciously. It's not an abstract concept like, oh yeah, I want to live consciously. There is actually support and work that we each need to do. And that's the container we're creating, is that we are here to support you as you do your work. And, here are some tools so that you can embody living consciously in a way that's, accessible to you and accessible to as many people.
Great. Well, I'll definitely include those links with wherever people are listening or watching this, so that they can get in touch with you. But I want to ask a question now.
Yeah, please do.
What would you say, like, if for somebody who is starting off in this living with intention, what is like a daily practice, what is a place to start practice that you recommend?
Okay. Thank you for asking that. It's like you read my mind and heart. So here's the practice that I'd like to guide you with. Okay. This is a practice every person I meet, I say, please do this practice. It's inspired by Kundalini Yoga. And it's a practice that works on your subconscious, which I really feel is needed right now. This is the time to shed those limiting subconscious belief systems that we're all carrying. I've been consistently doing this practice since last September. That's when I really felt called that I need to commit to it as a lifetime practice, because we're always like creating programs that don't serve us. It's a 3-minute practice. It is going to reprogram your subconscious so that you're in alignment with the highest, greatest version of your soul.
Ooh,
Okay.
I love that. Okay.
Should we get into it? All right. So it's Kundalini. So in Kundalini, we tune in, right? We create a container first, and then we go into the practice. So tuning in, if you're new to Kundalini Yoga, we're going to do a short, rapid tune in, Paul, in the interest of time. But the mantra is going to be Om Namo Guru Dev Namo, calling upon our higher consciousness, our guides, to allow us to be on this journey. And then after that, we'll quickly chant the protection mantra, just to sort of surround us in all directions, at all levels of our being, with a field of white and golden light. Okay, so that's what, for those of you who are new to this, just envision all of this beautifulness, and we're going to belt it out here. Ready, Paul? So we'll bring our hands to heart, thumbs pressed into sternum, palms firmly pressing into each other, inhaling. Just take a deep exhale, feel your sit bones. And we'll tune in 3 times, inhaling. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Om Namo Gurudev Namo. Hold that breath in and exhale it out. Protection mantra. Adgure name, Jugadgure name, Satgure name, Sri Gurudeve name. Adgure name, Jugadgure name, Satgure name, Sri Gurudeve name. Adgure name, Jugadgure name, Satgure name, Sri Gurudeve name. Inhale and exhale. Gently blink your eyes open. You can rest your hands down, and I'll just show us the mudra that we're going to get into. So tips of your fingers, except for the thumb, are going to be curled into the mounds underneath. The thumb is going to be pressing into your temples right here. Elbows are up, and we're just going to sort of keep this heart lifted here. Chin is slightly tucked in. And just try sort of pressing your back molars into each other. And as you do that, you might feel a slight movement underneath the tip of your thumbs. That's how you know sort of you've got that right placement of your thumbs. Staying in this mudra, in this posture, and still sort of keep moving your molars, keep pressing back molars gently into each other. We don't need to break our dental work or anything here. We're going to be chanting the mantra mentally. Sa, ta, na, ma. Okay, sa, ta, na, ma, primordial sounds, and that represents the cycle. You know, when Paul talked about sort of even, you know, what is God and that whole cycle, that's encapsulated in this mantra of sa, ta, na, ma. So we're sort of bringing that into our psyche. So we'll just do it for a minute together, but it's, I would say, minimum 3 minutes every day if you can commit to that to yourselves. So let's do that together. Eyes are closed. Gaze is locked in that space between your eyebrows and slightly above. And mentally vibrating the mantra, sa, ta, na, ma, as you keep pressing your back molars gently into each other. And perhaps you may even visualize letting these sounds vibrate out of your third eye, kind of projecting them out of your third eye. Space between your eyebrows and slightly above. as you keep mentally chanting sa, ta, na, ha, sa, ta, na, ma, sa, ta, na, ma. 5 more times. Sa, ta, na, ma, sa, ta, na, ma, sa, ta, na, ma. And last time. Sa, ta, na, ma. And take a full breath in. Hold that breath in, please. And exhale completely and relax your handstand. And just tune into your being, into this experience, in this moment. And know that every experience is complete in and of itself. Satnam.
Wow. I've never experienced that. Meditation or Kriya?
Meditation.
Never experienced that meditation before. That was wonderful. I felt from here, it almost like came up, and then I felt it in my brainstem, and then it went up, and then the lotus flower just opened right up at the top of my head.
That's beautiful, Paul.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Love it.
I'm officiating a wedding this afternoon, so
yeah.
Because this
I love that. Oh yeah. So 3 minutes of this. In Kundalini, we said this is the one practice. If you had no time at all to do anything, if you want your greatest bang for your buck, then this is the one. This is the meditation that you would commit to 3 days, every day. Consistency is key, right? If we want to live consciously, well, then it's creating and cultivating those habits.
1,000 days mastery, right?
Yeah. And then it's like you never look back after that.
Oh gosh, yeah. Thank you. You've given me a new tool for my practice. I love it. Thank you.
Thank you for that opportunity.
Ummul-Kiram, I love you. Thank you so
much love to you.
Conversation today. I want to ask you just a few quick questions.
Yeah, let's do that.
I didn't tell you what these questions are yet, so
cool.
Open up your heart and let whatever shoots out. So, question number 1: what is your favorite color?
Rainbow.
I love it.
I don't have one color. Yeah, rainbow. I'm a rainbow girl.
I love that.
At all levels.
Okay. Favorite book?
Oh my goodness, that's a hard one, Paul. Right. You know what? One of them is The Power of Now.
Power of Now. That's a good one.
Eckhart Tolle.
Have you read his Practicing the Power of Now, the little version of it?
No.
I found that was a little bit, for me, it was a little bit easier to digest than The Power of Now. I thought was like, he's pretty intense.
He is. That book is like a meditation for me when I read it. Like I receive downloads when I read it.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Amazing. Favorite album? Are you a music girl?
Oh my goodness. You know what? If you're asking Ummul-Kiram in the current day, my favorite album is White Sun. It's she's sings a lot of Kundalini mantras.
Yeah.
And yeah, White Sun. And what's her? I think it's like White Sun album number 1, 2, 3. I love them all.
I think White Sun won a Grammy a couple years ago, didn't they?
I don't know. I don't follow any of this. I have to be honest.
I don't even know what that means.
All I know is it resonates in my heart, and I'm like, yes, I love you.
Okay, now here's, I'm going to sort of ask you a series of these ones.
Yeah.
If you could describe your younger self in 3 words, what would they be?
My younger self, shy, quiet, timid.
Teenage self?
Teenage self, blossoming, rebel, quiet.
How about 20s?
20s. Gypsy. What's the word? Blooming and enchanted.
Ooh. And now?
And now, oh, and now I feel connected, powerful, and divine.
I love that. If you had to summarize this conversation in a short phrase that would work as the title for this podcast, what would it be?
Oh my. I have trouble with short phrases, Paul, don't you know?
2 words.
Um, it would be claiming your identity starts with you and your inner work.
I love that. Claiming your identity starts with you and your inner work. I love that. Claiming my identity. Thank you for that, Umal. You've given me, whoa, so much to like digest and process, but also so much language for stuff that I've been feeling within me for a long
Mm-hmm.
time. So thank you for that. I'm so in love with you. I really am.
Well, the feeling is mutual. You're feeling all that love beaming from my heart. It's coming right your way.
Thank you. It's like a big motherly hug that's wrapped.
Yes, it's a cocoon. Just like a mama's womb, there's warmth, there's nurturance, and yeah, you're so loved. And I am so grateful that our path, that the universe even connected us, and that I found the courage to write to you and ask you to come here and be vulnerable and sort of have my own confessions of what I've been up to, and how truly sort of doing inner work can sometimes make you feel really raw and vulnerable, and can create a lot of discomforts, and I didn't say that in my talk, but I do want to acknowledge that it's not like walking through a meadow and being like la di da, life is
If
grand,
only, right?
right? When you walk through a meadow, if you have walked barefoot, you'll notice some experiences are soft, and sometimes you get poked by something. There is discomfort. Sometimes the ground is too hot, too mushy, right? All terrains, and that's what inner work is. There is discomfort. That's where the growth is at, and I have, there are days where I wake up like, oh my God, like it just feels like it's a lot to process, but we have the medicine of nature to ground us and to keep us feeling connected, safe, supported, so that we can do our inner work. And that's, my last sort of few words would be that please know that if you're experiencing discomfort, that's part of the process, and that you're not alone. And then if you need support, Paul holds amazing space, right? Paul, that I know that I've been in your circles, virtual circles, and you hold such beautiful space as well. It's like reach out to someone who can hold space for you as you're unraveling. We're not supposed to be alone in this. It is your inner work, but it can be done with support. You're not alone in this, right? Like Paul, you've received a lot of support, so have I. That's what helps me keep going, is that community, the connection with other people who are going through it and can tell me it's okay, this too shall pass.
Mhm.
So
You can
please
be,
know.
one thing that I love to tell people is when their heart is feeling heavy or when they feel like they can't go anymore, I just say, just lean on me for a moment. You can use mine in the meantime.
Mm.
And I also need to acknowledge that I can't say that to everybody. I have to make sure that I've done my own thing so that I'm grounded enough to be able to hold up someone in need. Because yeah, we need that. Oh my gosh, I've been so blessed to have such amazing people. And like even Umal, like in teacher training when we're spending more physical time together, there was a lot of times where energetically I would go in there and I felt you. You know what I mean? Just like what, even though I didn't say anything to you, it just
Mhm.
having you there just was like that. Okay, I'm safe here for now. can process what I need to process. And so, yes, thank you for that.
Thank
I love you
you.
so much. And I cannot thank you enough. I'm just gonna gush. The rest of this podcast is gonna be just me basically gushing over you and thanking you, because your bravery of reaching out was what inspired me to say yes and then actually do this. So I'm so excited. You will be back, because we're gonna have an update.
Yes.
So much more that we have to talk about.
There's so much more, especially when you and me get talking, Paul. And you know, I'm never short of words, which is funny because I spend like a lifetime, right, of like with no words, right? And so now the the transmissions are coming through, and I need to share them. I need to put them out.
And you have such a way with words, and they're just so beautiful. So thank you so much. I love you tremendously.
Love you too.
And as always, I'm just going to share this blessing with you and everyone that's listening.
Thank you.
Now go forth in confidence and in peace, knowing that you are divinely guided, for there is love before you and love behind you, love to your right and love to your left, love above you and love below you, but most importantly, there is love pouring into you and is extended through you. And now allow this blessing to carry you until we meet again. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on. Satnam Namaste. Ummul-Kiram Patrawala. I love you so much.
And I love you, and I celebrate your courage in putting up my full vibration out there. Thank you, Paul. So much love, and so much love to everyone who's listening and tuning into these vibrations. You know, so much love. Thank you, everyone. Mwah. Bye for now.
Once again, a big, heartfelt thank you to our guest today. Please be sure to check out the show's links for ways to get in touch with them. And also in the show's links, you will see a link to the Living Spiritfully Collective Facebook group. It is a heart-centered community that I created in order to bring together people who are doing the work. So check us out. I love you all, and I'll see you in the next episode.